Shabbat Shalom. It's Friday again, and this time it's Parashat Chayei Sara. In our parasha, after the death of Sara, Avraham starts thinking about the future of his son Yitzchak, and he sends his servant to go and find him a wife. That wife will be Rivka, and we have at the beginning of the parasha a beautiful, intricate, dramatic story of the Eved and Rivka and her family and the back and the forth and the tests and all sorts of beautiful and amazing elements of the parasha that I actually would prefer to leave for another time, because I want to focus on the end of the parasha. Once Rivka agrees to come back and they're heading back, we have what I would argue is one of the most cinematic moments in the Tanakh. And here you can really see the screenwriter, the biblical screenwriter, working overtime. We see Yitzchak ba mibo be'er l'chai ro'i, v'hu yoshev be'eretz hanegev. It's the desert. Yitzchak is walking back from be'er l'chai ro'i, a very important place, a well, interestingly enough. On the way back from the well, vayitze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh lifnot erev. And Yitzchak, as dusk is falling, the sun is going down. You can just see in the desert, the shadows are incredibly long, and the sky is probably colored in different shades of orange and red and pink. And Yitzchak is out there in the field, in the brush, walking around, potentially, ruminating, or you could even argue some sort of meditation. Chazal connect this to the idea of mincha, as the sun is going down, having a meeting, a moment of deep intimacy with God. And vayisa'ena vayar, and he lifts up his eyes, and he sees v'hinei gmalim ba'im, and there are camels on the horizon. Vatisa Rivka et einea, and then suddenly the camera pans to the camels, and on the camels is sitting Rivka, the new bride, and she casts her eyes. Yitzchak is casting his eyes, and she casts her eyes. Vatire et Yitzchak, and she sees Yitzchak. Vatipol me'al hagamal, and she falls off the camel. That's a good question if she's trying to get down or if she faints, but you can just imagine this scene as she is kind of maybe exhausted from the journey, and she just falls off the camel. And the servants obviously rush to her, and she says, "Vatomer el ha'eved," she says to the servant, "Mi ha'ish hazeh? Who is that man? Ha'olech basadeh likratenu, who is walking towards us?" Vayomer ha'eved, "Hu adoni, he is my master." Vatikach hatza'if atitkas, and so she covers herself up, and there's a beautiful hint here of what we would call in Yiddish the bedecken, or the hinuma in Hebrew, the covering when the kala meets the chatan in the wedding the very first time in the kisei kala, and she covers her, or either covers her as she walks into the chuppah, depending on the different minhag. There's this beautiful element of coming together, covering in order to enter into the intimacy of marriage. Vayisaper ha'eved leYitzchak, and indeed the Eved meets Yitzchak, et kol, and tells him et kol ha'dvarim asher asa, all the whole story. And you can just imagine Rivka sitting on the camel, all covered up in her scarf, watching as she is watching her husband, her new husband, for the first time. Vayaviyah Yitzchak ohel Sara imo, and Yitzchak brings her into his mother's tent. Wow, this is very, very deeply emotional. There's a very deep feeling. The Midrash says this beautifully, quoted obviously in Rashi, that Rivka is the replacement for Sarah. And we'll see this explicitly in the text, but the Midrash says that Rivka fills the role, the space that Sarah left, not only in Yitzchak's heart, but also in the role of the Jewish people, of the next one of the imahot, the next one of the matriarchs. Vayikach et Rivka v'tehi lo la'isha v'ya'avea, and they get married, and he loves her. Vayinachem Yitzchak achrei imo, and finally he is whole after the tragedy, the death of his mother, and now finally he has, interestingly, not a new mother, but a new wife, a new partner in life. And there's a very interesting kind of feeling of replacement of Avram and Sarah are now replaced by Yitzchak and Rivka, and we can move forwards in the story. Indeed, Abraham is still doing his own thing in the background, but now the spotlight has moved to this new couple who are now starting a new chapter in the story of the Jewish people. Now, if we want to take a closer look, I think that this beautiful cinematic piece is introducing a new character. Until now, we've never met Yitzchak. Yitzchak has always been passive. Yitzchak has always been the son of, and only the son of. We don't even know his name half the time. And the whole story of finding a husband for Yitzchak, his name is hardly even mentioned. It's the son of Abraham. We're finding a husband for the son of Abraham. There are even arguments I saw in Rav Yoni Grossman's book. He brings certain theories that say that according to the text, it's not even clear that Rivka knew who he was. She just knew she was going to marry a son of Abraham. And now this is the man. Okay, cool. I didn't even know his name. But Yitzchak is, to a certain degree, on the sidelines. He's in the background. And now Yitzchak steps into the light, marches onto the stage. Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. Beautifully, Chazal give this moment such a charge of spirituality that this is Yitzchak now kind of stepping forth as the Shaliach Tzibur, as the Chazan of the Jewish people, starting a new tradition, Mincha, the idea of another connection with God in his own specific way, very representative of Yitzchak's personality. And wonderfully, there is a sentence here which makes absolutely no sense in the context. When Rivka asks the Eved, who is this man? You would expect him to say, this is Yitzchak, or this is the son of Abraham, who you're going to marry, or even this is the son of my master. But instead, the Eved, the servant, says something incredibly dramatic. He says, Vayomer ha'Eved, hu Adoni. He is my master. There is a feeling, even though Abraham is the person who sent him, he was the master, and throughout the story he is called Eved Abraham, and he even refers to Abraham as his master. Suddenly now, we've moved on. Yitzchak is the new master. In this moment, we have flipped the page. We are now in the chapter of Yitzchak being the master, and instead of the Eved, and Yoni Grossman points out beautifully, instead of the Eved, instead of the servant going and reporting back to the person who sent him, Abraham, he reports directly to Yitzchak. This is the new master. This is the moment where Yitzchak has stepped up to the plate beautifully. After the Akedah, Chazal point to the Akedah, to the sacrifice of Yitzchak, as a moment of a pivot in Yitzchak's story. Beautifully, they say that Sara died at that moment, Rivka was born at that moment. There's this kind of idea of shifting of the guard in a midrashic sense. Here we see it very beautifully, that Sara at this moment is now the past, and Rivka is the future. Rivka comes literally into Sarah's shoes, into Sarah's tent, and she fills that role, and now we have started the chapters of Yitzchak Avinu. Until now, we were Yitzchak, the son of Abraham, the son of Sarah. Now we are Yitzchak, the husband of Rivka, the father of, in the future, Yaakov and Esav, and Adoni. He is the master. He is the heir to Avraham Avinu and standing on his own 2 feet. And I think this is very beautifully represented in the phrase Vayisa enav vayar. And he cast his eyes and saw. And I thought to myself, that phrase sounds very familiar. I've heard that a few times in the Tanakh, and I tried to see where that comes up before. So the very first time appears with Lot, where he sees Sodom, but afterwards, beautifully, this phrase appears, if I'm not mistaken, 4 times with Avraham. We see that after Lot disappears, very beautifully, after Lot sees what he sees, Avraham sees what he sees, and Avraham says, and Hashem said to Avraham after Lot had disappeared, Sana enecha ure'eh. Cast your eyes and gaze. This is the promise that God gives Abraham of the land of Israel. So we see Abraham's gaze, this idea of looking beyond, in many ways maybe even a vision, this idea of having vision of the future, of being able to cast his eyes above the humdrum and to think big picture and think future. That already comes with one of the very first promises of the land of Israel, of the future, and indeed he mentions there the Zaracha eten et haaretz hazot. I will give this land to your children. V'samti et zaracha ke'afar haaretz, right? And you will have a huge dynasty coming from you. This is the idea of Abraham's vision, and this appears again, interestingly enough, with the three angels when they come, or the three men who come at the beginning of last week's parasha. V'yisa einav vayar. And Abraham casts his eyes and he sees these three angels, and this is the future of the birth of Yitzchak. This is the beginning of the promise of that idea. And then we continue when we come to the Akedah. Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham et einav. Vayar et hamakom merachok. When it comes to the Akedah, maybe here Dafka there's a moment of casting his eyes and seeing the future of the Akedah, maybe through a moment of despair. He sees God Hamakom from afar. He feels that he's very far away, but nonetheless he's still using the Abrahamic gaze. And finally, at the end of the Akedah, Vayisa Avraham et einav vayar v'hine ayil achar ne'echaz basvach. And then Abraham raises his eyes and he sees, instead of Yitzchak, there is a ram, and this ram represents the shofar, the horn that will answer, Veitakah b'shofar gadol, and this idea of the hope, the vision for the future, as he says, it calls Har HaMoriah, Har Hashem Yira'eh, the idea of the vision, the seeing, V'tichezena eineinu b'shuv chaletzion, may we see the place of vision is the Abrahamic place of Har HaMoriah, of Yerushalayim, of the future. That, I think, is the vision of Avraham Avinu. And very beautifully, when we're introduced to the person of Yitzchak, and the Midrash connects this very beautifully in Midrash Tanchuma, and he says that Yitzchak also cast his eyes. And we see Vayitze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh lifnot erev vayisa einav vayar. What is the introduction to Yitzchak? The vision of Abraham, the ability to see beyond, to cast his eyes up, and to have this idea of trying to think ahead, to see the big story of humanity, of the Jewish people, of the future. And I think this is a beautiful, beautiful idea that ties in very beautifully with the challenge and the promise of the Jewish people. We are the people of the book, as you often see, but I think more than the book, we are the people of the eyes who read the book. We are the people of the vision. We are the people who try and constantly look forwards to the future and try and find Yitzchak. Ironically, at the end of his life, will be blind, and yet nonetheless, he is a man of vision. He is a man of seeing beyond the mundanity of life. He can see deep, penetrate deep into the future, and the ideas, I think, really speak for themselves. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. May we all, Bezrat Hashem, try and cast our eyes a little bit, raise our eyes from the mundanity and look deeper into people's hearts, look deeper into the future, look deeper into what's going on around us, and not be so, I'd say, drawn into the reality of now, but rather potentially the reality of the future. Shabbat Shalom.